guys, what's up? It's Nicola from Singer's Secret. Today I'm going to answer a question that I get a lot from the singers in my community actually. They always ask, how do I find musicians to perform with me, to accompany me? You know, I'm a singer, I don't have a band, what do I do? So I've got a couple of tips on how to find musicians and expand your musical network if you're just starting out. The easiest way is to advertise. Simple. Advertise. Tell people that you want to find other musicians to jam with. So you can do this by putting a small ad in a street press magazine, and they do still exist, or there's classified sections a lot of the time on different online blogs as well for musicians seeking other musicians. Facebook is another great way of advertising that you're looking for musicians. You can find groups, music groups in your local area, so just like type in your city music groups, or like performing artists or something like that, or musicians your city, and you know, Facebook will spit out some other groups that are in your local area. Join some of them and then have a look through at the conversations, and then you can write your own post and say, hey, I'm a singer, this is what I want to do, I want to eventually perform, or whatever it might be. I'm looking for this particular style of musician, PM me if you're interested. You can also put a flyer up at your local rehearsal studios. There's rehearsal studios in pretty much every major city. Where musicians go to jam, and they've kind of got soundproof rooms that you can hire to rehearse. And quite often they have common rooms in these rehearsal studios, and they're usually plastered with flyers from bands looking for singers or other instrumentalists and stuff like that. You can just, get an A4 piece of paper, write your details, do those little rip-off tags on the bottom with your phone number, and see if something comes up. And then there's also sites that you can put ads up on for free. I'm not sure if Craigslist does it because I'm not in the States, but Gumtree, that they have here in the UK and Australia, you can just put an ad up on there for free saying that you're looking for musicians. One thing to keep in mind is if you are advertising for musicians, you may have to compromise a little bit about the type of music that you want to do, especially if you're looking for a musician who just wants to kind of jam for free with you and you need to rehearse quite a lot with this person. You're going to have to form a relationship, like a musical relationship, so you're going to have to give and take, do some of the music they want to do as well as some of the stuff that you want to do. If you've got a gig coming up and you need an accompanist for the gig, the whole can you recommend someone kind of thing is a really great way of quickly expanding your musical networks. I'll explain how this kind of works. So when I came to London, this is how I basically formed all of my musical relationships. I knew one, or pretty much one guy in London. He happened to own a jazz club, which was quite handy, but I still only knew one person. And so I went and I asked him for some recommendations. I'm like, I want to put a band together, can you recommend like a couple of drummers, a keys player, a couple of like sax player, I needed a trumpet player and all that kind of stuff. So he gave me a couple of names. He only gave me a handful, but I went away, researched those names on the internet, because musicians are getting savvier and instrumentalists do have websites, and it's kind of important to be able to kind of go up there and have a listen to their style and what they sound like. So I'd go and check them out, and then quite often it would also have the bands that they were in, and they'd have names of other musicians that they would play with. But I would then call those instrumentalists and say, hey, I've got a gig coming up, I need someone for this gig, these are all the details, yada yada yada, are you interested? If they were, that's awesome, but sometimes they weren't, and then I would ask them for some more names. So I said, okay, look, I'm new to London, I don't know many people, can you recommend other musicians that kind of have this particular style? And then they would spit out like maybe 2 or 3 more names, and then the rabbit hole continues. And before you know it, you literally know half of the musicians in London. Like, I have a huge list of musicians now, literally from doing it this way. The third way of finding musicians to accompany you or to form your band is by going to like websites of other local bands in your neighbourhood and finding out who the players are. And quite often especially in smaller cities, you'll find that instrumentalists will play for multiple bands. They're total band sluts. It's just the way that it is. You know, people like to have variety. It's not really until you kind of get like a professional level band that's gigging constantly that musicians will be like, okay, I've got to put all my energy into this project. You know, they'll often, at the start at least, you know, perform in several different bands. And so if you kind of have a look at the local bands that you like the sound of, you can kind of get an idea of who the players are, and then just approach them and say, hey, I've got a gig, you feel like playing. The fourth way to find musicians is by getting involved in the local community. And you should get involved in the local community whether or not you need to find musicians to jam with, because it's a great way of expanding your musical network, finding out what's happening, you know, scoring new gigs, kind of learning about this whole musical industry thing. But going to mic nights is a great way to start, because there's other musicians who are just starting who are looking for potential connections as well. You have to talk to them, that's how it goes, but it's a really great way of finding them. Go to some performing arts associations hold like industry networking events that you can just kind of rock up. There might be meetups that you can go to, whatever it might be in your local area. You've got to be brave for this one, because it means, you know, going out and contributing and talking to strangers and going by yourself sometimes if you can't drag a friend along with you. But it's worth it, and it is a really great way of connecting with other musicians in your local area. And the last way that I'm going to suggest for finding musicians, and this is particularly this is a little bit of a side kind of track, this one's for producers, those kinds of musicians, because I find that producers are a little bit different to instrumentalists. They tend to like, and I'm sorry if you're a producer, but they tend to hold themselves up in their dens of music and never come out. Like, they don't perform live as much as musicians do, so you never see them. They're like these hidden, kind of very secretive, elusive beings, producers. So one way I've been finding producers is through SoundCloud. So I've been going on there, and I'm looking for like a particular type of producer that is really good at trip hop and jazz, and combining like electronics with jazz. But they've got to know how to swing. They've got to have that language. But then I want the modern kind of flavour in there as well. So they are quite challenging to find, like, the right ones. And so going to SoundCloud is great, because they often, you know, post their producers. They can post as much music as they want. They are producing it all the time, and they'll post their different tracks. You can get a good idea of what their sound is like. And quite often the email will be right there on SoundCloud, or they'll have a website which has a contact form, and you can get in contact that way. So if you are a singer and you are ready to start performing, or you just want to find some musicians to practice with and jam with, you now know how to go about finding them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, just hit me up in the comments below. Otherwise, give it a like and subscribe if you're not subscribed to my channel yet, and head on over to Singer's Secret for some free vocal warm-ups which come with downloadable backing tracks, and I will see you in a couple of weeks.